Hey adventurers, so today is going to be our wrap-up for the month of December 2022.
Yep.
I don't know why I said it so weird, but I did.
Go ahead and jump right in.
Alright, so the first book that I finished in the month of December was The Broken Eye by Brent Weeks. This is book 3 in the Lightbringer series, and I'm really enjoying the series still. I was watching one of Mike's book reviews, his live stream that I just did the other night, and he mentioned that he didn't love that book 3 focused more on Tia than on Kip, or at least there was more focus on Tia than the other previous 2 books had, and I kind of agree with that. I actually think that I like Tia as a character, but I think that I would have preferred it to focus more on Kip. So other than that, I am very impressed with his storytelling ability and his world building and everything. This one had far more adult content, whether that's language or other stuff in it that I didn't care for, but the storytelling is still phenomenal, and I'm still really liking that.
The first book I read was Monster by Frank E. Peretti. This is the first Peretti I've read, and I went into it expecting more of a horror-y vibe and not knowing what the monster was. And I got into the book and I realized that we have perspective of a character near the monster. So we have an idea and we don't have the suspense that they had, that I was anticipating that you normally have in a horror. But one thing that I anticipated as I was reading, which is typically good, is that they're going to make the monster into the man. Because we have this title and people are going to assume it's this creature, but really it's the man. I expected that and they fulfilled it, and I think he did a good job. And I'm excited to read more Frank Peretti. I enjoyed his writing, enjoyed the story.
The next book that I finished was The Sum of All Men by David Farland. This is book 1 of the Rune Lords, and I really very much enjoyed this book. You can tell that he was an influence on Sanderson, but also it was more atmospheric than Sanderson is, and it wasn't as straightforward of prose as Sanderson does. So it was kind of like almost a bridge between Tolkien and Sanderson, and I did really like that. The world was amazing. The story, I really enjoyed the story. The magic system was disturbing actually, but it was really cool. So I'm excited to continue on with that series. This is the series that I'm reading with Nico from Nico's Book Reviews. And I guess Liam from Liam's Lyceum is also joining us for that. So I'm excited to continue reading 1 book a month for that, and yeah.
I also read Emma by Jane Austen. This is the second Jane Austen book I've read, so I'm starting to dive into it more. I listened to this one on audiobook and it was definitely the right choice. I've started reading the physical copy of Emma before and I had a really difficult time getting into it due to the way the prose is written, and I'd like to study it more and just find out what exactly makes it difficult for me to understand. It comes across as very telly, okay, but this is a classic, which is very normal. But what makes it so different from Pride and Prejudice, which I thought was fantastic, and I didn't notice that in the writing. So I'll have to study it some more and compare. I think I would have to physically read sections of Emma and compare them to Pride and Prejudice and some other classics to see exactly why. But I did enjoy the story overall. It's definitely an older book, and I just mean that by the way society works.
So we are now come to Calculated by Nova McBee. This is a reread, and I was roped into rereading this by my friend Bryn, the book nymph. She's got a Instagram and a bookstagram specifically, yeah, and is a good friend of ours. So we were talking about it. We wanted to reread it before book 4 comes out, whenever book 4 decides to come out. That's not exactly how it works, but yeah, and we wanted to reread books 1 through 3 in preparation for book 4. I liked book 1 a lot more than the first time I read it. I didn't remember there being quite so much of a YA romance subplot, I guess. That's a good way of putting it. And I noticed that more this time than I remembered it being there, but the story and the immense amount of foreshadowings in even the first 5 chapters of the book, having read the book 2 and 3, I'm like, oh, I see where she's going with this. And so that was really cool to see. I definitely liked it a lot more this second read.
I also read Omen by Christy Golden. This is, I believe, actually it's the second book in the Fate of the Jedi. Fate of the Jedi?
Probably.
I think that's what it's called. Anyhow, I really like Christy Golden's writing. I read Dark Disciple by her. I enjoyed it, and I saw this one at the library, so I grabbed it. I did not know it was the second book in the series, which seems to be a continual problem with Star Wars books and me. However, the books are written by different authors, and I think that it was good as a standalone, with the exception that it left a lot of loose threads. One thing I appreciated about it is it explained characters' backgrounds. I don't know a lot of things about Star Wars. This was Legends also. So there's a lot about Legends I don't know. And it explained things without doing too much. There was a little bit of it, but for the most part it felt like it was part of the story and not for the reader's benefit, which is really tricky to do. But I think Christy Golden did a good job, and I think that comparing that series, having been written by different authors, to 39 Clues, which is the only other series I've written that's written by multiple authors, they had to do that a lot in that one too, because they're starting over as a writer.
Yeah.
So I think she did a really good job with that, didn't overdo it, and I did enjoy the story.
And then the next one that I've got is The Other Wind by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is the 6th book, I guess, in the Earthsea cycle, and so the last book in the series. And if this was where my reading month ended, this would be a great reading month, because I've read 4 books already at this point, and this was week 2? Week 2. This was halfway through the month. And so I very much enjoyed it. It was far more contemplative and thoughtful than the first 5 books were. Book 5 was a little bit more leaning that way. Even book 4 was leaning more that way. But it wasn't really an action-heavy novel in any way, shape, or form. And I kind of appreciated that. It wasn't as just fun to listen to, but it was a deeper book in many ways because of that. Alright, I will continue on. Oh, this is an easy one to continue on to. So I read The Hobbit, part of my yearly reread of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I end the year with The Hobbit, and then I start the year with Lord of the Rings every year, and I'm loving reading them this way. So The Hobbit, I really don't need to say much about this because I've talked about it so much on this channel, and I've got several videos dedicated to The Hobbit. So I just absolutely loved rereading it. I will just talk about this really briefly, but Owen Edwards had gone through and read the Silmarillion and is talking about it, and is really dove in and thought about it and discussed it, and had other people talking and sharing their thoughts and stuff. And so his big discussions have brought back to mind what more of the lore of Tolkien's world. And so reading The Hobbit again, I was catching things. I'm like, oh, wow, I never caught this before, and stuff like that. And it was just really cool to see some of those little aspects that, if you just read The Hobbit, no, that's fun, whatever. But then once you recontextualize them with Lord of the Rings and with Silmarillion and with the Greater Legendarium, you see so much more, and you understand and pick up on the little things in ways that you never would have before.
So I actually DNF'd 2 books this month. One was called Dream Voyager by Thomas Locke. It's book 2 of a series that I started when I was a kid. I stumbled across it in the library, and I was like, wow, I haven't thought about this in years. I loved book 1. So I got it. I didn't even get halfway through. I was like a quarter of the way through, and the teenage romance just turned me off. And it wasn't like, I've probably read worse, but it was just not enjoyable. And I'm like, is this what it's gonna be like the whole book? There wasn't enough build up. It was just not fun. I wasn't feeling it. It didn't make me want to read. So I DNF'd it, because why would you read something you don't want to read?
Then I read Something Wicked This Way Comes. This was my last full-length novel that I read or listened to in December, and I kind of picked it up on a whim because I recently had seen a performance where it was circus theme, and so then now I'd been thinking about circus stuff and wanted to read something with a circus, or make a movie about a circus, or write a story or something. And so that's kind of percolating in the back of my mind. And then I finished all my other books, and I'm like, well, now what am I going to read? And then I remembered that Owen Edwards, again, had just mentioned that he was planning on doing Something Wicked This Way Comes as his next slow burn buddy read thingy, as he's calling it. The thingy, he doesn't use thingy, but as his next slow burn buddy read. And I was like, oh, might as well read this one because it's going to get talked about and all. Sounds interesting, and I haven't read it, and I haven't read any, what's that? Oh, there's Ray Bradbury. So it was perfect book for me to read. I don't know how I feel about it. I need to do some discussion. I'm looking forward to that discussion with Owen and everybody and seeing what their thoughts are as they go. I think I liked it. What I do know is the atmosphere was exactly what I was hoping for. It was like a creepy, dark, but not oppressive dark. Just like this could be very bad. But I don't know. I really liked it.
But didn't you love how the dad saved the day?
It was a
family story.
Spoilers, by the way.
And I thought it was fantastic.
No, it was. I think I really enjoyed it. It just, I don't. It's either a 4-star or it's a 5-star, and I'm not sure which. It's somewhere right in there, and I can't quite tell. But I think I loved it.
So the other book I DNF'd this month is The Painted Girls. I picked this up at the library, and the description said it was about the girls that Edgar Degas painted, so the lives of those models that he painted. And I went into it just hoping to have a nice historical fiction about a Renaissance.
Sounds right. I don't know anything about art.
A Renaissance artist. Someone's gonna tell me I'm wrong. And it was exactly that, but not about Degas. It was focused on the girls, and I DNF'd it because there was a little bit too much adult content. And if anyone's read it, they're gonna be like, "No, there's not. What are you talking about?" It was too much for me. So just calm down. I didn't enjoy it. It was taking away from my enjoyment of the story, and I kept waiting. They kept hinting at this theme of family and sisters making a priority, and I was really excited to see if that was what happened in the end. And then I got to a point where I was disliking it so much because of the dirty content, or the alluding to the dirty content and some of the personal choices, that I didn't really care about the sisters anymore. So that's why I DNF'd it.
Let's see. Okay, I've got 2 short stories. One of them is a short story in a collection of short stories, and this is by Kevin J. Anderson, which I know you don't like or haven't loved.
Great author, but I hate his writing.
But so the story is The Percussor's Tale. It's part of his Clockwork Angels series that I think he wrote. I'm pretty sure he wrote with another author. Anyways, I listened to this one and I loved it. It uses music as a major part of the story, and anytime you incorporate music or magic, light or colors into your magic or anything like that, you got me. I'm sold. So basically, I'm not gonna give much away, but I got this one for free for signing up for his newsletter, and I had forgotten that I had it until I logged on to my BookFunnel account or something like that and saw it. I'm like, oh, I forgot that this existed. So I listened to it real quick. He was the one who narrated it. The narration was fine. It wasn't anything spectacular. It wasn't super high quality recording, but the story was amazing. And the one thing that I didn't like was the dialogue. I think the dialogue was garbage, actually.
Very interesting.
So I wonder if that influences why you dislike him so much.
It might be. So one thing I'm curious to listen to an audiobook of Kevin J. Anderson, because I know that one of the ways he writes, in fact he said that he does this sometimes frequently for a story, is he'll go for like a nature walk and he verbally tells the story, and then he has it transcribed, and then he does his his editing and the normal things that a writer would do. And I think sometimes his books read like that, like they're spoken out, which I'm really curious to. I haven't had an audiobook of his. I've only read hard copies, so I'm curious.
Interesting.
See how that. I wonder if that makes it part of the way it is. He's such a renowned writer.
Yeah.
So I'm so like, why don't we like him?
I was the storytelling and the world building in it was just so incredible, and it makes me want to go read his Clockwork Angels series, because like I'm genuinely so intrigued by that world.
He knows how to write a solid story.
It's sci-fi and steampunk, and I'm not really much of a steampunk fan aesthetically. Like I don't love the aesthetic of steampunk. But still, just something about this story, it worked so well and it clicked for me, and I was just like, all right, this is cool. Go ahead.
So the last book I have, and I've not completed it, today we're filming this on the last day of December of 2022 actually, and it's The Girl Who Could See by Kara Swanson. I'm close to being finished. This is a novella. I think I'll probably finish it today, so I'm going to include it in here. Why not? I'll just determine to finish it today. So I've been really enjoying it so far, but I'll wait to give thoughts. If someone wants thoughts, they can ask me on our server or something, or in the comments.
And then the last short story that I finished was The Green Door of Fate, and this is by, what's his name? Craig Martell. So I was talking to my mom, and she's like, have you heard of this author, Craig Martell? Apparently he lives in Alaska. And I was like, okay. So I started looking up for him, and I signed up for his newsletter and got a free ebook and a free audiobook. And I'm like, okay, so I listened to the audiobook, and it was pretty cool. It was another sci-fi. It was called The Green Door of Fate, and it focuses about this green door and their research of it, and the conclusion that they come to at the end of the book is so not intriguing, but it's just like, that's interesting. And I really, really liked it. It did have a little bit of language in it. It wasn't an overbearing amount, but there was a little bit of language in it. I think it's military sci-fi. Craig Martell was in the Marines, I believe, and so it's kind of understandable that it's in there. But I really enjoyed the story and the thoughtfulness that went into it. And I'm probably going to be reading more of Craig Martell's stuff.
So that pretty much wraps up our December and our 2022. I think we had a very interesting reading year for both of us, and I found it very productive.
Yeah, I want to say that December was one of, if not my best months of reading this year. I could briefly go back and look. Rivaled by May and June and August.
I still think it was the longest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was definitely not my longest, but I had a very, very busy month.
So I'm happy with our progress that we made. We will talk to you guys next year. Actually, by the time that you're saying this, it will be next year. But thank you guys for watching The Narrative Adventure. We post news every Monday and Thursday, and have our social medias linked in the description down below.
See you again soon.